Hello and welcome to Storytime with Mr. Ryan. On September 24th, we celebrate the birthday of famed puppeteer and children's entertainer, Jim Henson. You may not know the man, but perhaps you've heard of his creations. Henson created not only Sesame Street, but the Muppets as well. Even went on to create Fraggle Rock and the science fiction series The Dark Crystal. Today we learn what makes this puppeteer so special in Jim Henson, Puppeteer and Producer by Hannah Isbell. Let's hop on in. Jim Henson was one of the most well-known TV and movie performers in the world. But even though he was famous, many people never saw his face. For 60 years, Jim's characters entertained children and adults. When Kermit the Frog or Ralph the dog made us laugh, Jim Henson was there, just out of the camera's view. As a puppeteer, Jim created some of the world's most loved characters. As an artist, he did things no one had ever done before. Jim Henson's creations changed TV and movies forever. Henson was born in Greenville, Mississippi on September 24th, 1936. It was years before people had televisions in their homes. Later, he remembered his family's first TV set as, quote, the biggest event of his adolescence. When he was in 5th grade, Jim's family moved from Mississippi to Maryland. As a child, he and his older brother Paul loved arts and crafts, and he was very close to his grandmother, a painter and quilter. Jim's brother and grandmother both had a big influence on him. His grandmother especially encouraged his interest in art. She helped teach him how important it was to use his imagination. Jim started working in television while he was still in high school. In 1954, he worked with puppets on a Saturday morning program for a local TV station. A year later, he was given his own show on NBC. It was called Sam and Friends. The 5-minute daily puppet show introduced the Muppet that later became Kermit the Frog. Jim wanted his creations to show more feelings and have more life than wooden puppets. He made them out of soft felt so that their faces could show more emotion. He used sticks instead of strings for their arms so he would have more control over their movements. He came up with the word Muppet, a combination of marionette and puppet, to describe his creations. On Sam and Friends, Jim did not use a puppet stage. Instead, he let the film frame be the stage by hiding himself off screen. This made watching his Muppets on TV more like watching real people. It was one of the tricks he and his co-worker Jane Niebel came up with for film and TV. Sam and Friends introduced many of the things that the Muppets are famous for today, like music and sharp humor. In 1959, Jim and Jane were married. In the early 1960s, the Muppets started appearing on TV shows across the country. Jim and his family moved to New York so they could be on TV every week. There, he met other puppeteers and puppet makers. Jerry Jewell, Don Solon, and Frank Oz worked with Jim and Jane to create the Muppets we know today. Working with others made Jim even more creative. Many of his new Muppets needed more than one person to work them. His friendships were very important to his work. In 1966, Jim was asked to help create a new show for public television. The show was going to be different. It would teach children through TV. The show was Sesame Street. Sesame Street began in 1969, and children around the country met some of Jim's characters for the first time. Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, Bert and Ernie, and more taught reading, math, and values to kids using fun and humor. Sesame Street was so successful, schools had to change what they taught to keep up with kindergartners, who had learned the alphabet, counting, and other skills from the show. It truly changed educational TV forever. Sesame Street has aired on PBS, America's public television, for almost 50 years, and it has won many awards. Today, 20 countries have their own version of Sesame Street. Each different version has Muppets that show the culture of the country where the show is aired, so that kids from all over the world can relate to them. Jim Henson wanted to entertain everyone, not just kids. In 1976, his prime time show, The Muppet Show, brought the cast of Muppets to the whole family. The leader of the characters was Kermit the Frog. Jim was the voice and operator of Kermit. The rest of the gang, including Miss Piggy, Gonzo, and Animal, were voiced and operated by the friends Jim had met over the years. Children and adults loved the comedy show. Many famous movie, TV, and music stars of the time wanted to be a guest on the show. Soon, the Muppets were too big for the small screen. In 1979, the Muppets starred in The Muppet Movie. It was the first of many films to feature the Muppet Gang, and it was a hit. A song from the film, The Rainbow Connection, sung by Jim as Kermit, was even nominated for an Academy Award. That same year, Star Wars creator George Lucas asked Jim to help with creating the character Yoda. Jim suggested his good friend Frank Oz as the voice for the popular Jedi Master. It wasn't just Jim's friends who worked with him, though. All 5 of Jim and Jane's children began working with Muppets when they were kids. His daughter Cheryl remembered, "One of the best ways to be around Jim was to work with him." Jim loved making movies, and in 1981 he decided to focus on films. He dreamed of creating new worlds and fantastic creatures. Jim's 1982 fantasy film, The Dark Crystal, was different from anything people had seen before. It used animatronics and new ways of puppeteering. People of all ages loved the movie. Many of its puppets are on display in museums around the country. Jim's next film, Labyrinth, combined live action, puppets, and music. It became a classic. In the meantime, Jim's Creature Shop helped make characters for movies, TV, and theater. The company began in 1979 in London and continued to grow. Its goal was to always put art and imagination first. In May of 1990, Jim became ill. After suffering from a cough for a few weeks, he was taken to a hospital in New York City, where he died a short while later. He was only 53 years old, and his unexpected death was difficult for friends, family, and fans. Jim Henson's gifts and talents are still alive today. Sesame Street has continued to teach children about everything from the ABCs to birth and death. His Creature Shop continues to bring the most fantastic creatures to life, and the Muppets continue to entertain people of all ages. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me and wishing Mr. Jim Henson a very happy birthday on September 24th. I hope you learned a little bit more about him, the fantastic and phenomenal creator of Sesame Street and the Muppets. I hope you've watched some of these shows, and if you haven't, I highly recommend checking them out. They're super silly and super fun and super educational. You're going to learn a lot. Well, thank you guys so much for watching Storytime with Mr. Ryan. I hope you enjoyed watching along. Please feel free to check out my other stories on this channel, and if you're looking for fun activities you can do from home, go ahead and check out veronalibrary.org/children. Until next time, I'll be seeing you. Bye-bye.